Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 popular authors that just don't work for me. I've read a couple of their books or one of their books and I just plan on reading no more of their work for whatever reason. But before we go ahead and get on into the video, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, you can check down in the description box below for links to my Amazon shop where I list some of my favorite books I discuss on my channel, as well as my Patreon where you can be entered into winning book giveaways from me. First off, I just want to preface this by saying that I don't think any of these authors are bad authors. If these are some of your favorite authors, I think that is amazing. Brandon Sanderson is one of my favorite authors, and I know and have heard of people who just do not like his work. So the good, amazing thing about literature is it is objective, and there are tons of authors and books out there that appeal to different types of readers. The first really popular author that I just plan on not reading ever again is Seanan McGuire. And she is such a popular author. Her Wayward Children series is so popular. Every Heart a Doorway is some people's favorite book of all time. I have not read the Wayward Children's series. I read Middle Game by her. And I was so put off by this book that I said, unfortunately, she doesn't mesh with me. I'm not going to read any more of her work. But Middle Game is a fantasy sci-fi about 2 twins that are human but not really. They were created by an alchemist, and one twin is the embodiment of language and one twin is the embodiment of math. And they are basically being used by this evil alchemist. And the reason that I didn't like this book is I thought it was really confusing. Like, the premise sounds really, really neat, but I thought that it was just not executed well, and it was just very muddled. The fantasy was very vague and unclear. And then we also jump around timelines a lot, which is not something I usually mind, but it just bogged down the story because we spent way too much time in the childhood of these siblings who didn't even grow up together, rather than the actual, like, addressing the conflict of the book. And then I also felt like the ending was really unsatisfying and the antagonist just had no depth. And it was an almost 600-page book. And when I finished this book, I was upset that I had wasted my time. And I have also heard that this book is some people's favorite book of all time. I've seen a couple booktubers say this, and it just didn't work for me, unfortunately. So I don't plan on reading any more Seanan McGuire. The next author is John Grisham. Once again, crazy popular author. A ton of his books have been made into movies, and I've read 2 of his books. I have read The Runaway Jury and The Pelican Brief, and I just did not connect with these books. I did not connect with his writing style. It was so incredibly dry and just boring to read. There was no imagery, no vivid descriptions, just nothing to draw me into the world, and I just felt like the characters were very surface level. And when I read The Pelican Brief, I actually had seen the movie first, and I really liked the movie, so I wanted to read the book, and I was like, this is going to be like conspiratorial, there's going to be a whole bunch of suspense, and there just wasn't. And I was really disappointed in the book after I read it. So also, I am mostly a sci-fi fantasy thriller reader, and these are, courtroom dramas, that type of thing, so it might be I just don't mesh with the genre, but I just don't plan on reading any more John Grisham. Next is Neil Gaiman, which is a big surprise to me because Neil Gaiman is an award-winning, celebrated author, and I have read 4 of his books. And the one that did it in for me, where I decided I wasn't going to read any more of his work, was The Ocean at the End of the Lane. And once again, I know this is some people's favorite book of all time, and it's just not for me. I think that Neil Gaiman has an amazing, amazing imagination. Some of the stuff that he comes up with, I just wish that I had that type of mind. But I feel like with regards to the fantastical elements and the fantasy elements, it's way too vague and unclear for my liking. I would much prefer well-defined magic systems, and this is more like magical realism. And this book actually upset me, and I'm not gonna tell you why because it would be kind of a spoiler, but it had to do with the ending and then the main character's state of mind at the end of the book, because I felt like it completely negated everything that had happened up to that point. So I just didn't understand his choice in doing so, and it kind of just put me off to read any more of his work. And I don't think I've rated any of his books more than 3 stars. They're enjoyable, they have their fun moments, but I just never fell in love with any of his stories or any of his characters. Next, we have Chloe Gong, and I've only read one of her books, and that is These Violent Delights, which is the first book in a series or a duology, and it was pitched as a Romeo and Juliet retelling. In the past, I have taught English 1, and I have read Romeo and Juliet many, many times, so I am very familiar with the story, and I feel like it was kind of an injustice to pitch this as a Romeo and Juliet retelling, when really the only thing that was similar to the original play is the names of the characters were kind of similar, and then you have the 2 main characters, Juliet and Roma, coming from like rival gangs. But other than that, there was just nothing similar to the play. So I went into this thinking it was going to be a very close retelling, and it just wasn't. So that right there was a disappointment for me. And then next, I could not stand the main character, Juliet. And the reason why is because all she did, in my opinion, the whole book is go around trying to like puff herself up, trying to impress her father and her family. And then she had no qualms with the, like, killing people. Like, just killing people. There was no remorse. There was no empathy. There was nothing. It's like she was a cold-blooded killer. And, like, I don't want to read about a female YA character that's a cold-blooded killer. I feel like anybody who can kill in cold blood has some sort of mental instability. So I've just heard people saying they love Juliet, she's a strong character. I'm like, no, she's not. She's a cold-blooded killer and has no capacity for mercy. And the way that this main character is written is probably the main reason that I'm not going to continue the series. And then the other thing was the fact that in Romeo and Juliet, one of the main things that makes that play so good is the angst between the 2 characters, because they're falling in love for the first time. And in this book, in These Violent Delights, the 2 characters already had a relationship in the past, and they're like, they're exes, basically, that were having to work together. And I'm like, you just took away all of the angst of them, like, getting to know each other and falling in love for the first time, because they're just, like, angry, hateful exes. So it just didn't work for me, and I don't plan on picking up any more of her work. And lastly, we have Holly Black, and I've read a lot of Holly Black books, probably 7 or 8 at this point, and I find her work a lot of fun. I really enjoy the fantasies that she's able to create, the worlds, but every time I read one of her books, I'm kind of just left a little bit unsatisfied, like there could have been more to the story, and I don't love any of her books. I like them, I just don't love them. So would I recommend Holly Black as a YA fantasy author? Absolutely. She's just not a favorite for me. And the fact that I have read 7 or 8 books of hers, and none of them are favorites, they're all about 3 stars, just made me realize that I'd be okay with never reading any more of her work. And especially the Cruel Prince or Folk of the Air trilogy, I feel like the ending of that trilogy was probably one of the worst endings of the series, or endings in general, or books in general, that I have ever read. And it put a really, really bad taste in my mouth. And I feel like she might have been pushed, like deadline-wise, to get the story done so it could be published. And because of that, the story suffered. I'm not sure if that's true. That's just me speculating. So Holly Black, fun YA author, just not one that is a favorite of mine. Okay, you guys, that is it for 5 popular authors that unfortunately I just do not mesh with their work. I wish I did. I want to love all of these authors. I want to love all of their books, but for some reason or another, they just don't work for me. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these authors or any of their works and what you thought of them, and I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye.